What's going on? How we doing? Long time no talk. I've been busy doing, right? I believe there are seasons for everything. There's a season for thinking, there's a season for learning, and there's a season for doing. I was in a big doing phase, right? I was focusing on being present and being tactical and tangible with my actions and behaviors. But now I'm going back into the thinking phase and I'm trying to balance and combine the thinking and doing. How can I think and subsequently do? And obviously the way to do that is to record my thinking and then do it in form of content. Anyway, today I want to talk about something very important, and that is learning. Most importantly, hyperlearning, and the solution to this problem of analysis paralysis and information overload and the free state. Right? So the free state is this third state that we think of when we think of sympathetic nervous system activation, right? Sympathetic nervous system, you have fight or flight, but you also have freeze, right? That is that moment in between where you don't know whether or not you're going to run or you're going to fight. And nobody talks about the freeze state, but the freeze state is what most of us experience because the stressors that we have are not enough to elicit an actual adrenergic response like freezing up or fighting. So we're stuck in this freeze state where our body's like, should we go into this state? Maybe, maybe not. Then we end up doing nothing. You've been there. You have 1,000 things on your plate. You have a giant to-do list. It's so much you get overwhelmed and you do nothing. There's 1,000 things you could be learning, but it's too many. So you just go on social media and scroll TikTok, right? Because that's so much easier, right? It's hard to learn. It's hard to read. It's easy to watch people dance on TikTok and like whatever other trends there are that make me want to actually blow my brains out. It's absolute brain rot. But I have a solution for that too. Anyway, let's talk about hyperlearning. So we've all been there. You have 1,000 bookmarks on Twitter, right? You have the watch later tab on your YouTube, 100 videos long. You have all these documents that you want to read, all of these books that you want to get to, all these topics that you want to explore, but you can never get to it, right? Because you have obligations and you have responsibilities. And when you're done with all your work, it's so much easier to sit and watch TV or Instagram now than it is to read a book. So what happens? These pile up more and more and more until you have hundreds of different resources available to you and you don't know which one to read. You see, it was easier back in the day when we only had access to books via library, when there was only 5 DVDs that you owned, so you didn't have to take a lot of deliberate effort and energy to choose what you're going to watch, right? How much time do you spend scrolling on Netflix looking for a show? It's oftentimes longer than actually watching the show. Even more importantly, why watch Netflix at all when you can get 2,000 times the stimulation from watching YouTube shorts? Anyway, the problem is there's too many options, not enough time. The solution is to hyperlearn, right? So hyperlearning is really just simply this idea of learning on the spot, right? You want to know something, search it up immediately. You want to read something, do it right now or just completely forget about it. No more saving bookmarks, no more adding to a watch later list. Watch it, get it out of the way, or just forget about it forever. Alternatively, schedule it in, right? So I always believe that we want a default fallback to go to when it comes to some form of content or learning, right? When I am in downtime, there's always one thing that I'm focusing on that I know I'm going to come back to if I have a little bit of free time. Maybe it's the dopaminergic system. Maybe it's the cholinergic system. Maybe it's myofascial release. Maybe it's Vietnamese culinary arts, like culinary craftsmanship. Regardless, there's always something that I have where it's like if I have free time and I want to go explore something and learn something, that's what I go to. So I always have that. I oftentimes have one book that I always go to. Actually, I have 3 books, right? I have one scientific book because that's just my area of interest. I have one mindset book that's going to help me with just thinking and actually doing things, right? And then I have one book that's more tangible, right? Related to something that I'm doing in business or in practice, fitness, whatever it may be. But anyway, going back to hyperlearning, this is the most important thing that you can apply. And here's how this would look, right? Say you're learning a language, right? Like I learned Spanish. I learned Spanish by moving to Spain, moving to Spain, but moving to Mexico more importantly. And really just anytime I didn't know a word, I would look it up and then I would immediately use it in practice, right? I would pay an Uber driver to drive me around wherever in the city because it was cheaper than Spanish lessons. I would sit in the back. I would think of something to say. I would look it up. I would reverse engineer how that sentence structure and grammar worked. I would say it to him. I would hear the response and I would see how he responds to it. I would do that over and over and over again. Anytime I had a thought in English, I would immediately translate it to Spanish. That enabled me to become fluent in Spanish to the point where I go to Mexico and I am oftentimes the most fluent gringo, and it's a great feeling, by the way, without ever sitting down and actually like studying Spanish, without ever using Duolingo. Now, did I have some background experience? Yes, I did. I lived in Spain as well. But what I'm saying is I learned very, very quickly how to speak Spanish functionally and properly by hyperlearning, right? So I apply this to a lot of other components as well, but it's most important to apply to content. right? Especially with things on Instagram or on Twitter or bookmarks or whatever it may be. If there's something that you find interesting or something that you find insightful, do not say, oh, let me save this for later. Say, if this is really important to me, I'm going to dig into it right now. And the way that you dig into it is you sit down, you grab a piece of paper, and you write the most important key components and notes on it. Now, that is for your records, but more importantly, that is how you hardwire ideas into your brain, is writing them down on paper. This act of taking something in, processing it, and then putting it down in your own words, that is how you hardwire information, and that's how you hardwire memory. So do that, right? When it comes to hyperlearning, act immediately or forget about it entirely. Stop saving hundreds of bookmarks and read laters, right? Have one thing that you're deliberately learning every single day, so you know when I have free time, this is what I'm going to. And then also just set some daily KPI heuristic, right? For me, it's like 10 pages is my daily KPI. I know that I'm probably going to read more than 10 pages, but 10 pages is the minimum. That is the threshold that I've found that gets me into learning mode, right? That is the threshold that after 10 pages, it's not much harder to read 15 or 20 or 30, but I need to hit those 10 pages. So find your heuristic, hyperlearn. If you aren't going to learn it right now, either schedule it in or just forget about it forever. Get rid of that giant document, that giant Notion read later page. It's not helping you. Anyway, guys, hope this helps. Godspeed. Talk to you all soon.